Welcome to Business Mastery with Don Kennedy, your quick under 45-minute dose of expert insights and strategies to make a positive impact on your business and life. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. We are going to unravel all the things around the virtual team. So I have Pete here. He has not only an agency, but lots of expertise in this area. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Dawn, thank you for having me.
All right. Can you tell everyone who you are and who you serve?
Yeah, so my name is Pete Neubig, and I'm originally from New York. I live in Texas now, and I am the CEO and co-founder of VPM Solutions. VPM is a marketplace that connects the real estate industry with remote team members in over 100 countries. It's a direct hire model, and so we're anybody who has a job that is that's needed, that they're looking for remote team members to fulfill that job. So anything that does not require a license or needs to be physically at a property, typically somebody remote can do that. And I started the business because I used to own a property management firm. I'm a licensed broker in the state of Texas. I'm a real estate agent, and I used to own a property management firm, and I was having a hard time filling, I hate to say this, but low level, low enjoyment job roles. And so I wasn't really getting great candidates in the Houston area when we used to have a brick and mortar before 2020. And we ended up moving to remote, and we were able to change our whole business. We went from breaking even to profitability. We went from a stressful environment to a stress-free environment. We went from chaotic and reactive to a proactive, and we were able to reduce our churn rate, increase our revenue, and basically decrease our churn as for team as well as for companies. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell there.
Awesome. All right. So let's just start from the basics. I know a lot of people who went through the pandemic did have to make some changes in their business, but it sounds like you went fully remote at that time.
Yeah, I was fully remote prior to that, and then
Okay.
at that time, um, it became really, more mainstream to be remote. So I was kind of an early adopter. We started doing remote in 15,
Okay.
and, remote's been around since the early 2000s. Once the internet really became, available, in other countries, you know, it started taking form. In the early days, a lot of agents, believe it or not, were the first early adopters to using virtual assistants. But the way it was would be like you would give them a, ch- a tick list or a task list or a checklist. We weren't
Yeah.
right. What okay, and it was really rudimentary, Dawn. So it's like, okay, I'm going to give you this checklist. I'm gonna email it to you. You do the checklist. You give me kind of like a overview of what you did for the day, and the checklist really was super super low, like low items, and it was really super rudimentary and super easy. And then what happened is like around 2015. I was one of the early adopters into saying, we can do more. I think these remote team members can do more. And we started giving them processes. So, for example, like a transaction coordinator, you just give it the whole thing, not just like, here's the four things you need to do for the transaction coordinator. You are now going to be the transaction coordinator. In property management, there's a lot of these type of positions. Like there's the lease renewal person, there's the collections person, there's the evictions person, the move in person, the move out person, there's the SEO person, there's the marketing person, there's a property accountant, and so on and so on and so on. And instead of just giving little pieces of that job to somebody, we said, you know what? We're going to hire you to literally run this process. And so that was the next iteration. What happened after that was all of a sudden you're seeing people hire supervisors and managers. So think about this. I had a person in Mexico that managed a team in Houston.
Interesting.
So it got to that level, right? And now I have clients that have hired chief people officers, chief financial officers, chief IT folks. So you're actually seeing C-suiters now that are being hired. Now, these are still smaller businesses, but that are being hired remotely. So it was the evolution has come really full circle as like I used to be just the low level stuff. Now they're doing basically the really high level stuff and managing and supervising not just teams abroad, but also teams in the United States.
Yeah, that's amazing. The evolution, as you just perfectly explained, is as people have become more comfortable, like with technology and things like that, but also the idea of being location independent, meaning that you can be somebody who can work for a company with your skill set, and maybe you don't live near the company you want to work with. I think that's another huge benefit to this is remote work, and we've been seeing some pushback and return to the office stuff, but remote work, if you're somebody who would be an excellent fit for a company in another state or in another country, then yeah, why wouldn't you hire the right fit, the culture fit, the skill set fit, just because they don't live near you anymore?
Yeah, I mean, you, I think you're in California. Is that right, Dawn? Right?
I'm actually right now in Ohio.
You're in Ohio, that's right, okay. So I don't know about Ohio, but in Houston, traffic is a bear, right?
Okay.
The roadways were built for 1,000,000 people. There's 4.5 million people that live here. So the roadways are tough. When I was trying to find people, no one would come work for a company if they lived more than 20 miles outside where that office is.
Okay.
Because 20 miles during traffic would take you an hour, and more than 20 miles is like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and no one wants to sit in traffic for 2 hours. And so the amount of people, the pool of people that we could choose from, we were very limited. Once we went remote, we did just like you said, right? We can be way more open because not only can I find somebody remote in Houston, in Texas, in the United States, but also abroad. And just like the United States, where if you hired somebody in California, that is going to cost you more than if you hired somebody in Arkansas. Well, if I hired somebody in Arkansas, it's gonna cost me more than if I hired somebody in Mexico, and Mexico is gonna be higher than if I hired somebody in, say, the Philippines. So, just because we're paying lower wages doesn't mean we're paying low wages. Right? I'm paying lower wages, but the wage that we're paying typically is equal or more than what they could get in their local market. So you're just open up to so many more potential candidates and people to go work for, and now you can be more picky and you can actually elevate your company by hiring better people.
Yeah, I love that. So let's talk about candidate fit. Who is good for remote work and who is not good for remote work, right? So there are people who are going to say, I want remote work, but they don't actually necessarily have the discipline or whatever the attributes are. So, how do we find out before we even start looking for a job itself? Where do we find the applicants and what makes them good for a remote position?
I can't really speak to the United States because with remote, United States is it's pretty new, the remote deal. And I think we're still trying to navigate that. And we've heard the war stories, right? I mean, I actually have a friend of mine that has 3 jobs right now, right? Like literally he's remote and he's got 3 W-2 jobs, 3 40-hour weeks. Not sure that he's actually given each one of his companies 40 hours plus a week, right? So we're still navigating it. We're not used to this.
Okay.
However, people in other countries that have started this in 2020, they're at a generation now where they've grown up with this. So it's kind of I didn't grow up with an iPhone, right? I learned how to use an iPhone, but kids today grew up with an iPhone.
Right.
So the folks in, call it Mexico, Central America, even like, Africa and India, Philippines, they've grown up with this. So this is kind of a way of life. Now, with that being said, the couple of things that we look for with remote. So when we hire, whether I hire remote or in person, um, the hiring process is very similar. There's a couple of differences. All right. The first difference is obviously I have to run your internet speed. Right. So these are things that we take for granted in the United States, right? Everybody's got 100 meg or gig or whatever it is, right? If you have like an
Yeah.
10 connection, you're like a lazy lima bean. You're the lowest on the pole, right? But there you might see KPS, not MBS or whatever. You might see kilobits versus megabits. So you have to run an internet speed test. On our platform, which I'll talk about later, you can actually have them run a speed test and it reports it on their profile. So you can actually literally look at the speed test. The second thing we're looking for is their work environment. So when they get on the computer, we ask them to unblur their background, right? If they're blurring the background, that's great. They show that they know the technology, but we don't unblur the background because we want to see what their work environment looks like. And if their work environment is really not conducive to actually work, we tend to. I don't say I don't hire them, but we do grade them differently than somebody who's got a work environment. And if you are on a and we do everything through video, so all the interviews should be through video, and if they're not at their house and they're interviewing, they're at a Starbucks or at a beach, we discount them right away. We just don't believe that it because when you work for us if you're gonna work for me as a direct hire contractor, you're gonna be at in your office space, in your home. You're not gonna be gallivanting all over the world, and I want you on camera. I want you dressed appropriately. So, people, believe it or not, still do not dress appropriately for an interview. Right, so
Okay.
that's something we look at. So we look at how it's dressed, we look at, their internet speed, we look at what their environment looks like, we look at, and then the last thing is we look at responsiveness. How responsive are you to, like, because we ask for a lot of things. I ask for an internet speed test. I ask for a disc assessment. I ask for a self-interview before I interview you. I ask for, you know, what's the last thing we ask for? An English test. And if you're not super responsive, then that's not gonna work with our culture and how we operate. So, every time I give somebody something to do, that is a test, and the week weed themselves out is the way I use it to weed the week out.
Yeah. And let's just talk for a second. I don't know if everybody knows what the DISC test is. It's one of the personality tests, right, to determine your traits.
That's correct. There's a ton out there.
There are.
There's ones that are way expensive and better than Disc. I've been using Disc for 20 plus years. It's easy. I like it. It's treated me very well. I've gotten, it's not the end all be all, but for what we use it for, it's worked really well for us.
Right. Okay, great. So you are going through the same sort of HR process that you would if somebody was going to show up into work every single day. And let's talk about training remotely because I'm sure you can't, no matter how much experience you may have with the skills and the role, the company still needs to train. And I think that becomes I don't want to say a stopping block, but a deep consideration for people when they want to do remote work. I think hiring remote graphic designers or people who do manage social media is one thing because they're going to, send it to you for approval and stuff. And they just need to get your brand voice and things like that. But let's talk about because you were talking about transferring complete processes to people. How do you do the training online and remotely?
Yeah, brilliant question. And it is the biggest concern that we run into with folks. The first mistake people make is I don't really have a good complete job description. And they don't understand the personality profile or the KPIs for that job description. So they hire the wrong person originally, right? So if you hire the wrong person it's not in line with your core values, it's not in line with the job, that doesn't have the right disc profile, that doesn't understand the KPIs, that the job description says answer phones, all other duties assigned by management is not a good job description.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do, then you don't know what to do. So the first line of defense is making sure that they understand what they have to do, what the rules of the game are. That's the job description. And if you get the right person, okay, now we can go in and say, okay, how do we train? Now, I'm gonna tell you, Dawn, how I train. I don't know if this is the right way or the wrong way, but it's served me well for about 15 years.
I was
Okay.
just saying, if it's working for you, it's right for you.
That's right. Now, interesting enough, I work out of the house. My business partner worked out of my house with me for about a year. And every time we did training, guess what he did? He went upstairs into one of my bedrooms up there as his office, and we got on a Zoom call. So that tells you one thing. They don't have to be next to you. Matter of fact, we found that it was we got way more out of being on a Zoom call because we can share the screen, we can both input into the screen. So the way we train people is the first thing we do is obviously everything is on Zoom and we record the Zoom. We make sure that we train. So we spend a lot of time with every new hire the first 2 weeks minimum, meaning at least an hour a day every day. And I know this sounds like terrible, and I get it.
I,
And
I
it can sound
I'm gonna interrupt you. And say I don't think it sounds terrible. I think being able to go back to a recording of a training session later and being able to invest at least an hour a day for 2 weeks is much more than most people who onboard for 2 days with HR and then they're shown their desk and given a computer. So
Yeah.
I don't think it sounds terrible at all. But go ahead. I didn't interrupt
Well,
there.
it's not like, when I was at Empire as a property manager, I was putting in 12-hour days. And then I had to train, we had a bunch of maintenance coordinators and I had to train them. And that was an hour every day. That doesn't mean I still put in 12 hours. I mean, I put in 13 hours because I still had 12 hours of work to do. So that's where I sit, where I guess that's where I feel like it sounds terrible because it's a kind of a monkey see, monkey do approach. And uh, yes, there you can create videos. I'm gonna get into that. So just hear me out. Originally, you don't you have a video, you do the video, and you do an hour to an hour and a half the most. People's brains turn off after an hour and a half. Um, and what I like to do is I like to start from the beginning. So if I hire somebody for a turn coordinator, I'm going to start from the beginning of the process and we're going to work together and we're going to go through the process. And we're going to start at the beginning. And after an hour, we're going to stop it. Then their job is to rewatch the recording, right? So now they've heard me. Now they're going to watch me. And then their job is to build the manual. So everybody in my company builds their own manual. Like I don't have a manual. I made a mistake. I built a 110-page maintenance coordination manual that I had, and I was so excited about it. And then I gave it to all my maintenance coordinators, and not only did they not read it, but they didn't even know how to search through it. They didn't even know like what the where the policies were, where the process were. They couldn't find anything. And so we took this approach where they actually have to write down what they've learned in a manual. And then the next day, we don't say, "Do you have any questions?" and start from where we stopped. We actually go back over it where they are teaching us what they've learned. Right. So now they have to write it down and they have to regurgitate it. So there's 3 or 4 different ways of learning. It's, how do I hear? How do I, hearing, watching, writing, and regurgitating. And so by doing that, it takes a little longer overall to get through the training, and there's no denying that, but the retention rate stays much higher. And if I give somebody a full process versus just a few things from this process, a few things from this process, a few things from this process, it's much easier for me to understand what they're doing. It's much easier for them to understand what they're doing, and then I can build a key performance indicator or a scorecard on if they're successful or not. So that's how we do it. And then, of course, when we hire the next person, because they get elevated or we're gonna hire somebody in addition to that, they are then the ones that hire. So I'm only doing it the first time. And then after that, they do it. And then if that person leaves us and we don't find somebody right away, then we have them watch the videos, right? So we number them, you can tag them, you can use, YouTube and make them, private versus public and tag them correctly. And you can literally say, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. And then all you have to do is before they start the second video on day 2, they meet with you to talk about what they learned from the first video. So you can kinda cut your time in half. And then, if you use like Notion or like the YouTube, and they have their own manuals, pretty much they're trained at that point. What we have found is most systems or most processes in property management and real estate can be taught between 2 and 3 weeks. And then after 3 weeks, your escalations, you still want escalations, so there's still management, which we'll talk about. But escalations are about it's like the 80/20 rule. They get 80% of it, 20%. And then, as you manage them, you train them on the escalations. And then after about 90 days, it's typically a 10% of stuff get escalated to you.
Very nice. So, what percentage of you were saying it really lowered churn and increased retention by what percent? Or could you give me a kind of a figure for the audience listening? If they make the investment in the training and the remote, these people are going to stay versus somebody who quits after 90. That's what I'm hearing.
So, I actually had 23 people working for me at Empire for about 4 years, and I lost 3 on my remote team.
Wow.
So, one of them was actually due to my fault. I was not a very good manager. I learned to be a better manager, and probably said some things I shouldn't have said. I made some innuendos that like they're going to lose their job. And the fact of the matter is, here's the thing: your good people will leave, your bad people will stay. And
Yeah.
the one guy that I actually liked that I was going to promote him. He's the one who left, got a new gig somewhere else because he thought like I was so upset with the way things were going that he thought, I was going to fire everybody. And so here's the thing too, if you have been a selfpreneur or you've been an employee your whole life, once you hire somebody, you have to be very careful of what you say and how you say it because now you are the boss. And I used to be able to say things when I was an employee for 20 years. No one ever cared because I wasn't a manager or supervisor. And when I saw my own company, everybody cared what I said. So I have to be careful of that. So the churn rate was really low. On my Houston side, I think I had before I transferred over to remote team members, I think it was over 30%. I don't have the exact
Yeah.
numbers, but it might have been, I think it was over 30 or 40% of churn in like a 3-year period. So once I got the remote team on board, I wasn't dealing with as a lower type of people in the US. I was dealing with kind of higher, and my churn rate on the US side went down for two reasons. One, I'm just dealing with better people, and two, they're not stressed anymore because the team in Mexico was taking on a huge. I was able to hire more people, right? Because they're lower wages, so we could handle more tasks, and my team all of a sudden in the US didn't have to work weekends and nights. So if
Right.
you're looking at this and you're working weekends and nights because you're showing houses or you're doing just whatever it is during the day, and then you have to go back and do all this work at night. If you have a remote team member, they can do all this work. The stuff you have to do at night, they can do for you during the day. So when you go home, you can actually hang out with your family.
There you go. So let's talk about the legalities and the technicalities of working with people from different countries. Because again, like you were saying, there's tax things and other considerations. What are the legalities, if any, that we need to be aware of when we start looking for a team?
Yeah, a lot of people get real nervous about the taxes. So let's talk about that first, right? So they're like, well, how do I get taxed? And the 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 fact of the matter is these folks are not 1099s because they're non-residents, right? They actually live in a different country. So they're responsible for their own taxes. What the IRS recommends and what we recommend, because the IRS recommends it, is when you hire a contractor that is living in a different country, there is an IRS form called the W-8BEN, like Ben. And it's a one-page form, and basically it states, this is me, right? Here's my name, and so that they'll fill it out. This is my address, and I am a non-resident of the United States, and I'm responsible for my own taxes. Like literally, there's a form for it. So now on their side, they would have to then give their government an earnings report, right? And you can, if you wanted to, like, we don't do this. I've never done this, but you can say, hey, when you file your taxes with Philippines, Mexico, whoever, give us a piece of paper that says you filed your taxes, or give us, show us some proof. No one's ever done that. No one, I don't really think you need to do that. Now, if they are being paid through the VPN platform, they can easily just click an earnings report and they can put in what dates, like Jan 1 to December 31, and they can download that report and then they can give it to their CPA. So the tax thing is really a non-issue.
Okay.
The bigger challenge is misclassification. Right? So, especially for my folks in California, the US Department of Labor, they had this big challenge with Uber drivers a few years back. And then I think Uber had so much money that the Uber drivers got carved out and they're not employees, they're 1099 contractors. So, the Department of Labor does not have jurisdiction over people that live in different countries. It's the US Department of Labor. So this means that if you have a remote team member, it is their Department of Labor in the Philippines, Mexico, El Salvador, Kenya, wherever that their jurisdiction. And so what misclassification means is like, okay, if it looks like an employee is treated like an employee, then they're an employee. And my feeling is like, hey, if I'm sending money over there and I have them work 8-hour days, 40 hours a week, that if they are then if the Philippines says they're misclassified, for that classification law suit to come to me, it has to go through the Philippines court. They have to say this person has, because the person would have to actually put the misclassification in. Then they can say, okay, then we have to find a judge in the US that will take the court, and then we have to then claim that they're misclassified. I checked, I had an attorney check all the databases in the US, and it's never happened. So I'm not going to say there's 0% chance of a misclassification, but right now there's been zero cases. So let's call it a very small risk. But there is a risk, especially if you're making them work and come to meetings and all that good stuff. That's called a direct hire contractor. The other methodology is using a company. Unlike mine, there's companies out there that will do an employee of record. And so you would pay the company that's in the Philippines, and then they would pay the Filipino, um, local wages and give them benefits. Now, the difference, the positives, and there's positive negatives to both sides, right? The positive of going direct hire contractor is you pay less and the contractor gets paid more, which then reduces your churn rate. The negative of that is like you're not you could be classified incorrectly in the Philippines, which is very, very low risk. But the bigger challenge of that is you manage them. You have to hire them and you have to manage them. When you go with an employee of record model, you pay money up front to them to have them source some talent, and then they charge you an hourly rate, and then the remote team member or their team member gets a fraction of that. So you pay more and they pay less. Now, the positive of that is if somebody you hire through an EOR doesn't work out, then a lot of times they'll just rehire somebody and you're not even involved in it. And they're like, oh, you had Maria, now you have Phyllis. So you have to look at what's best for your business. If you're somebody that just cannot manage people, then go with the NEOR model. If you're somebody that is like, hey, money matters to me, I need to reduce it, and I also don't want to have 3 or 4 different people over time, even though somebody else is managing them. I want one person that is going to embody my core values that I'm going to be able to kind of push down our culture to. Then a direct hire model might be for you.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk about platforms and how you were saying people are getting paid through platforms. You have probably a platform where people can upload documents and do all those things when following processes. So let's talk about what that needs to look like. 'Cause I'm sure there's not just 2 million emails flowing back and forth.
So there's a bunch of different platforms. I can talk about my platform, VPM Solutions. So it's VPM, like Virtual People Management Solutions.com. And you create a profile as a company. You can post a job, and then I think we have about 40,000 people looking for work. We
Wow.
we are advertising to people looking for work in the real estate industry. So these are people that are looking for work in the real estate industry. It's free to create a profile on both sides. Now, what we do, because we understand that people in, third and second world countries or non-US countries do not understand real estate as or property or management or whatever it is. We have about 45 courses online that are mainly in property management and real estate, and now they can take those courses for free, and if they pass a test, they get a certification. So we differentiate from any other platform by offering this free, we call it the LMS courses, but the VPM Academy. What that does for you, if you're looking for somebody and they literally can have somebody who's taken a transaction coordinator course. Now, does this mean that they're gonna be able to, they're like a direct fit that you just plug and play? You still have to do all that training we talked about,
Right.
but at least they understand and they took their time to then turn to watch the course, and then they actually have the short-term memory to remember, right, to pass the test. So they have the capacity to learn, they have the understanding of what's going on so that they know at least the basics. So we get them to crawl, you have to get them to walk and eventually run. And then we have, the other difference is, we're about I think we're in like 120 different countries that we have people in different, from all over the world. And you negotiate directly with them. You post a job. If somebody applies or you invite somebody to the job, we have an application tracking system to kind of track you through that. And if you like somebody, you can negotiate. So we don't set the price. VPN doesn't set the price. And then when you hire them, they actually enter time on our system. You approve it, and then they get paid out. And then how VPN makes money, all that is free, by the way. And we have courses. We have a disc course for companies. So if you want to take a disc course, you can create a VPN profile and take disc.
Nice.
Uh, the way we make money is once you pay that person, the virtual assistant pays a platform fee of 10%. So that's how we make money. So let's say you hire Pete at $10, VPM's gonna get $1 and Pete's gonna get $9. And that's the way it works. And so we have reporting, we have for both sides, for company and the virtual assistant, we have training, we have the sourcing. And then we have the management where you can upload some documents, you can manage people in different workspaces. So we have kind of I call us like the ADP for direct hire contractors.
Nice, nice. Okay. So then the employer themselves, though, they do all the negotiation, they hire into their own company. They follow the steps that they would do, they do their own training and things like that. So you are providing, I'm going to kind of like the neutral platform where you have good candidates, good employers, and you're able to make that match. So you do payment portal, but they would be working directly for the other company.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. And we have three solutions. We have the DIY, which I just explained. We have the members will guide you as the company through our hiring process and through our platform and kind of guide you. So it's called the Do It With You service. And then we have the Do It For You service, which is our gold glove service. And we charge $1,500 for that. And we'll meet with you, get the criteria, we'll create the job posting, we'll do all the interviews, we'll do our whole hiring system, and then we'll grade them on our 10-point scoring system. And then you get the top candidates to interview. If you don't like anybody, we'll send you more candidates. We don't charge you until we fill, and we have a lifetime guarantee. So 2 years later, somebody leaves or you fire them and you want to rehire that same position, we will use the Gold Glove service to rehire for free. So it's a
Wow.
one time. And then we also have, if you go through our Gold Glove, then you get access to our Gold Glove marketplace. And we have a bunch of vendors and coaches and consultants that have given time either for free or at a discount to work with you. So we have about $15,000 of bonus for the $1,500 that you pay. So, and that keeps growing. That list keeps growing monthly.
That's fantastic. All right. So, anything else that we need to know about remote employment? I know you said that there was an internet speed, but let's talk about some of the other things. Do they get a phone number, like a VoIP for the US? Like, how do you manage those sorts of um different things
Yeah,
to
no, great.
give
You're asking
them
man, you're asking great questions.
a
Uh, so like, yeah, so you use a voice over IP system. If you Most people are using a voice over IP system today. So all you do is assign a number. Like we use Crescendo. We just assign them a number and then they have a number. We put them on our Slack if you're using Slack or whatever your instant messaging is. You put them on your email, you put them on your Microsoft. Like they are like a regular team member. So you have to treat them as such and you add them you're gonna give them a company email, and then you're gonna add their company email to all these products. I will say the one thing that I have done historically, I never buy their computers. They are contractors. They have their own computer. So that's something else that you should look at. Like if somebody's running an old 486 desktop computer from 1997, like, okay, we probably,
hey, we all had one of those.
yeah, they're called doorstops now. But like, you have to look at, we don't buy them a computer, have to have their own computer, but what we have noticed is that you are way more productive with 2 screens, and most people only have 1 screen, and a lot of people are using a laptop. So what we do is we allow them to purchase a, a monitor, we allow them to purchase a microphone, and we allow them to purchase a camera, and then we reimburse them. Or if they don't have money, they'll send us like kind of like, here's like the app, whatever Amazon is equivalent to their country. Say, this is what I need to buy these things, and we'll send them the money to buy those things. It's a small cost for a huge increase of productivity.
Perfect. Okay. So it sounds like this is pretty painless nowadays, all the way across the board. You have a bigger applicant pool. Technology is there. You can train online. So what other resistance do you think that you found people have to virtual workers or virtual employees that you would want to make sure we knew about?
Yeah, I'd say the last thing that I can think of is the management, right? So we have the finding of the person, and a lot of people think that's the heavy lifting, right? Finding the person, interviewing, and hiring them, and that's just the beginning, right? That's not the heavy lifting. That's the easy part, right? Then you have to train them, and we talked a lot about that, and that's kind of that's like the big bulk of it. That's the middle, if you will. But then once they train them, what a lot of people do is they kinda like, I call it abdication, right? Like, "I trained you, you're good, like, go ahead and do your work." And then they say, "Oh, yeah, I'm such a good manager, I don't micromanage." Right? And so there's micromanaging, there's delegation, and there's abdication. Abdication is basically saying, "Hey, I'm not really gonna give you a vision, and I'm not gonna course correct, but go do your job."
Yeah.
But I didn't really tell you how to do your job, right? So at least if you're training, then that's great. That's a good start, but you have to course correct, you have to manage. The other piece of it is I'm so worried about this $6 an hour person stealing time from me, which is it's just so funny to me, right? So what they want to do is they want to record every keystroke, do a screen recording, if the screen goes to sleep because they were in the restaurant for 30 minutes, like, they wanna dock and pay, and I'm like, "You're doing this to a $6 an hour person, yet your $100,000 a year person comes in your office late, hangs out, at the water cooler, takes 2 smoke breaks, does a long lunch, and leaves early because their kid got baseball practice." But you don't care about that. They're stealing time, you're just not looking at it that way because they're not getting paid hourly, their salary, and you so I'm not a big fan, as you can tell, I'm not a big fan of micromanaging. No one, no matter where they live, wants to be micromanaged, right, to the nth degree. But no one also wants to be, not managed at all. People want to be managed. They want to do a good job, and they want to know, what does a good job look like? So I recommend that you meet weekly, like you meet daily until they're trained up. Then you meet at least weekly, and the meeting has to have an agenda. You cannot just say meet just for the sake of meeting. That's called a waste of time. And so, we have a training for companies or people looking to hire virtual assistants on how to hire, train, and manage a remote team. But I'm going to give you the cliff notes. Okay. You meet with them weekly. It's the same day of the week at the same time, and you never miss it unless you're on vacation or you're sick. Okay. The meeting should be 45 minutes to an hour long. The first 5 minutes is a feel-good review. A feel-good. I wanna know what's good. What is, tell me something good about the company and tell me something good personally. 5 minutes. 5-minute KPI review. Are we on target? Are we off target? Alright? If we're off target and it's a challenge, we're gonna move that into the challenges. If it's on target, great. Then we're gonna look at that's 5 minutes. Then we're gonna look at, tasks. Tasks that were due from last week. Did they get it done? If not, do we need to move to the challenges list, right? Then we go to the challenges list. Now, one of the things that we do in my companies is, like, we meet weekly. If you have a challenge, you do not Slack me, email me, call me unless it is DEFCON 10. You put in a challenges list. What I've learned over time is that 80% of the challenges that get put on the list get solved before the meeting, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. 'Cause
So
they're empowered to solve them.
you just nailed it, right?
Yeah.
And once you give people the authority to solve, so in my companies, you cannot change the policy, but you can definitely change the process, especially if you own the process. I'm a big fan of ownership, accountability, responsibility. Above the line, I'm a victor. I'm not a big fan of blame, excuse, denial, where I'm a victim mentality and I'm below the
Right.
line. So my people are taught that. And so now your job when you hire a remote team member or anybody you hire, your job is to ask one question. What can I do to make you successful?
Right.
What do I gotta do to get stuff out of your way? I have to give you the tools, I gotta give you the training, and I have to get rid of all the roadblocks. That challenges list is gonna be the long even if you only solve 1 challenge, right? Because there might be 10 challenges, right? Well, which is just solve 1. Imagine if you solved 1 challenge a week. That's 52 challenges every year that you solve. And then, what I like to do is when that's over, what I like to do is I don't like to rate the meeting. That's an EOS thing. I like to actually ask on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your, stress level? And, I found that, if the stress level is 10 plus multiple weeks in a row and there's no end in sight to the stress, then, they're gonna punch out or you don't have the right person in the right seat. So it could be it's just a season and you're in leasing and it's July and it's just crazy, but at least you know, "Hey, September's coming." Like,
Right.
it's going to end, right? So it could just be a season and their stresses level is 10 and you're expecting it. But when their stress level is a 2, 2, 2, and then it goes to 10, then maybe it's time to hire a second person. But
Right.
if the stress level is always high, it could also just mean that you didn't hire the right person and put them in the right seat. It could be something about their personality profile. Like, I know when I do things that are new, in business, it stresses me out, right? And so it could be that. It could just be like, I'm a high D, I'm not a good S, so if you ask me to take customer service calls, I'm gonna have a high stress because 'cause I'm just not good at that stuff. So you just have to once you understand what the job role is, what the KPIs are, what the, personality profile is, what your core values are, and you match all of that stuff, all the other stuff just kinda falls into play.
I love it. So that sounds like there's no reason for anybody who's listening in today or next week or whenever to put off hiring virtually or remotely for positions because you just kind of dispelled all of the reasons that we give or excuses that we have, I think, when it comes to doing that. Because again, like you said, they're still a direct member of your team and you still have all the same responsibilities to them. So where can everyone find you? I know you gave us the website and they have the Discourse. I'm going to put all that in the show notes and in the description for YouTube. But where can they find you, follow you, and learn more about you?
Yeah, I'm not probably not a really good follow. I'm not on social very often, but I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm not on X. Um, don't no reason why, just not on X.
Yeah.
Um, but actually email is the best way. So if you wanna email me and you put in the subject Dawn Kennedy, I will give anybody who reaches out to me, if they wanna do a gold glove, I will give them 50% off.
Wow.
For your listeners. But if they just wanna meet with me and just chat about business, about remote team, whatever it is, I'm more than happy to talk to you all. Email me Pete at vpmsolutions.com.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you for such a generous offer. I honestly didn't see that coming. Everybody listening or watching, there's no requirements to do discounts to be a guest. You are an expert. You need to be here. So we will put all that down inside again, the show notes, and we'll put it into the description for YouTube. So whenever you find this episode, you can go ahead and reach out. And again, I appreciate all of your time and expertise. And thank you for really answering all of the questions that people probably have relating to whether or not they're, remote or they're in the office or local. So thank you for
Eh,
that.
well, you asked great questions. Thank you for having me on your show, and appreciate you giving me the ability to get in front of your audience, and, I hope that somebody learned at least 1 or 2 things, that they're like an aha moment. Maybe they knew it already,
Yeah,
and they're like, "Oh, yeah." So thank you for the opportunity.
absolutely. All right. We'll talk to y'all next time on the next episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to dawnkennedy.com, and you can now check us out on YouTube as well as, of course, any of your favorite platforms that host podcasts. Take care.